right, so I'm looking, you were working on 5.2 on sampling variability, and you asked these two questions: how can I make a graph of the sampling distribution, and how can I calculate p hat? So on this graph, I recommend watching this video on Unit 3, but to make this graph, you just have to do a whole bunch of samples, right? So his 35 students, each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is 35. They each did a sample proportion, right? So every sample proportion is then graphed. So how do you make a graph? You need the you need the data, right? You need a whole bunch of samples. So let's just go back one thing here to this, right? So we're going to have a population, right? And this population can be, let me see if I can find a population here. There, good picture here. All right, so here we had, in this thing, we have a fan to simulate 500 SRSs. So this means 500 samples. What do we have? We have our population is 200 chips, and they're 100 red and 100 blue. So we know this in advance. Often we're not going to know what our population is, but in this case we do, as we're learning what these things mean. So I have 200 chips in here, and you're going to choose 20, and you're going to do that 500 times. So choosing 20, 500 times. And how do I calculate p hat? Well, every time I'm gonna, when I take out 20 chips, I'm gonna know how many red and how many are blue. So this is asking you the proportion of red. So let's say I have 200 chips in a bag, and I pull out 20, and 11 out of the 20 are red. So p hat is 11 out of 20. And I can calculate that as a percentage, 11 out of 20. And one dot, right, is going to be 11 out of 20 is a decimal, right? And this is showing you all of those. So they did it 500 times, and obviously doing it by hand 500 times is not possible. So how do you graph it? Well, each dot represents one of those samples. And how do I calculate p hat? Well, it's just a proportion, right? It's depending on the situation. So in this case, it's how many out of 20, so 20 is my denominator, and how many of them were red. So each time you have to figure out what they're asking you to calculate, and it's going to be a proportion. And when you want to graph it, you take each sample represents 1 point on my graph, and that's what they're saying here. And it's saying there was one dot at 0.15. What is that? Well, 0.15 is 3 out of 20. So in one sample, there was only 3 red drawn. All right, I hope that helps you with your two questions. If not, let me know and I'll make you another video.